The number 11, 2-0, undefeated USC Trojans travel to the Big House to play in their first ever Big Ten Conference game against the 18th ranked 2-1 Michigan Wolverines, who only a little over a week ago suffered a blowout loss at home 31-12 against the now number 1 Texas Longhorns. This matchup is the definition of high stakes. USC can change how everyone in the country, perhaps in part how they view themselves, if they win this game against the defending national champions. Michigan can do the same. People are a lot more down on Michigan compared to USC, and that's very understandable, and part of me even thinks that should be the case. But if they beat USC, they'll earn a ranked win, and people will think about Michigan in a different light, especially because Alex Orji is now the starting quarterback moving forward, and not Davis Warren. Today, what I want to do is give you 5 reasons why I think Michigan will win this football game. I picked USC 27-26 to win this game. And really, in summary, my premise was I think that Michigan should win this game. I think Michigan has a lot of matchup advantages against USC, and they also have the home field advantage. But right now, I trust USC's staff more, and their passing offense has a massive advantage against a Michigan pass defense that has struggled. If you want, and I highly advise you do, to see my Michigan versus USC preview and prediction, I encourage you to click the link in the top right corner of the screen, right where my finger's pointing. You should see a little pop-up, and that'll bring you, if you click it, to my USC versus Michigan preview and prediction. I'm going to be giving statistics and analysis like I always do in my preview and prediction videos. But again, the main focus is 5 reasons why Michigan will win this game. So it'll be mostly talking about Michigan or talking points that can go Michigan's way, not USC's. There will be another video talking about 5 reasons why USC will win this game. As for big games like this, games that I'm interested in, I like to release a few extra videos to cover all the angles about the games and not just talk about my broad previews and predictions and thoughts on those matchups. Before we dive into my 5 reasons why I think Michigan will win this game, I want you, yes you, to like the video, to subscribe to the channel, share this video around in this channel to other college football fanatics like us who love the sport and are deeply invested into it, and comment your prediction for this game down below in the comment section, and give me reasons, 5 if you can, why you think Michigan will win this game. If you think that USC will win, you have a hard time believing that Michigan can win this game, at least try and come up with a reason or 2 why you think Michigan could win. After all, the spread right now is only USC -5. It opened at under a touchdown in favor of USC, so the odds makers do think that this will be, or at least should be, a competitive game. USC won the most recent matchup between the Wolverines and the Trojans in the 2007 Rose Bowl to conclude the 2006 season, where USC dominated and won 32-18. So let's dive in. And reason number 1 why I think Michigan will win this game is they have college football's number 1 defensive line. Now, you may say that the defense has struggled, and you would be right there. And you may say that Texas went into Michigan, allowed no sacks, ran the ball moderately well, and that may lead you to question, is Michigan really elite on the defensive line, on the defensive front? Well, I'll say yes, and here's why. Number 1, Quinn Ewers was averaging about 10 yards per attempt in the first half against Michigan. Michigan's secondary did a very poor job of covering Texas's receivers, and they, in the fourth quarter against Fresno State, the first drive against Arkansas State, didn't do a good job of covering group of 5 receivers either. Michigan's secondary is much thinner than it was last year, and some of Michigan's younger players have really struggled with any level of competition. Michigan's linebackers have also taken a step back compared to last season, and I think that Wink Martindale through 3 games is clearly not as good as Jesse Minter was at Michigan, and maybe not as good as Mike McDonald was with the Wolverines back in 2021. He may be Michigan's worst defensive coordinator since Michigan's run began in the 2021 season. The jury's still out on him. We're only 3 games in. I don't want to make any, decisive, solid conclusions. But so far, Michigan's defense schematically has clearly taken a step back compared to the previous seasons, and also the quality of play at linebacker and defensive back. On the defensive line, Michigan has 8 TFLs and 3 sacks throughout the season, and they're only allowing 70 rushing yards per game, 2.7 yards per carry, and again, with only 3 sacks, even if you were to adjust the yards per run attempt to take out the sacks, it wouldn't be that much higher. Michigan only allows about 26.3 rush attempts per game. Teams pass more on Michigan, and because they have had success passing on Michigan, Michigan has to adjust, and that opens up the ground game. Texas also did a wonderful job of trying to run and pass. I mean, you typically always pass to the outside because you're not, passing in the middle of the field behind your line of scrimmage. That, rarely, if ever, happens. But Texas, when they ran the ball, typically they ran to the outside because Michigan has, they're stronger on the inside, and Wink Martindale has really blitzed often on the interior and not the exterior, trying to get inside leverage rather than outside leverage on offensive lines, and I don't think it's worked all that well. The Wolverines do a really good job of stopping the run, clearly better than USC, where USC averages opponents to run for about 1.5 extra yards per carry, despite the fact that they've sacked their opponents more in total sacks, despite playing in 1 less game, and also more in general. So Michigan has a much better run defense than USC. Their pass rush, I would say, is nullified more so by their scheme than their talent. I'll get into another reason that involves Michigan's defensive line, another reason why I think the Wolverines will win this game in a few minutes. But right now it's just about the defensive line and how it matches up against a USC offensive line that against USC struggled to protect Miller Moss at times. I think it was Miller Moss's delivery and his wide receivers' fantastic matchup, one-on-one and in explosive plays against a suspect LSU secondary that allowed USC to pass as efficiently as it did. Not a phenomenal pass block. Michigan will take advantage of some youth and inexperience on USC's offensive line, particularly at tackle, and I think on the interior they're better than USC when you look at Michigan's D-line versus USC's offensive line. So that trench advantage on Michigan's defensive side, which I think is pretty big, is a reason why I think the Wolverines can and will win this game. You look at reason number 2 is Michigan's ground attack. It's really just that simple. Michigan's rushing attack was problematic for the first 3 quarters against Fresno State, and then they turned it up in the 4th. You never really got to see how effective Michigan's rushing attack was against Texas because the passing offense couldn't do anything. Michigan's defense was giving up 3rd down conversion after 3rd down conversion. They couldn't get Texas off the field. So Michigan, they couldn't utilize their ground game to their full capacity from the get-go against Texas. And that's something that USC, I think, wants to do and will try to do against Michigan, is get up early, try and get Michigan out of their comfort zone so that they can't run the ball and try to control the game. But a reason why, and a big reason why Michigan should win this game, is Alex Orji at quarterback, Kalel Mullings at running back, and Donovan Edwards at running back. These 3 on the season have had 82 carries for 478 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. All 3 rushing touchdowns, came against Arkansas State. So this ground game is untested, and to a certain degree, when I put this up as a reason, I am almost, hedging my bets and giving some benefit of the doubt, but not nearly as much benefit of the doubt as I would have in the preseason. We now have more sample sizes to go off of. We have more samples. So I look at Kalel Mullings and how he did in that late drive against Fresno State and how he did for the whole game against Arkansas State, where Michigan's O-line didn't just run block moderately well.
against Arkansas State, and at times really well with Greg Crippen at center. Kalel Mullings is breaking tackles. He's the size of a linebacker, tight end, and he has the speed of Hassan Haskins, and you even see a little bit of Blake Corum pre his knee injury in Kalel Mullings as well. He's obviously running back number one. And Donovan Edwards, even when he missed some gaps, looked good against Texas, was doing well for that first drive there, did well against Arkansas State, didn't do well at all versus Fresno State. He really is a home run hitting type running back. He's not a feature back, and Michigan needs to get him more involved in the passing game. But when you take those two running backs, Michigan's offensive line, and also Alex Orji, who can run the ball. He's a very effective scrambling quarterback and a quarterback who knows how to execute a designed run. Well, USC at times, if Michigan gets creative, could be facing a triple option type, and they'll definitely be facing the zone read for sure. Michigan, by starting Alex Orji and with their identity in running the football and how they showcased that they were getting back to that against Arkansas State, and Sharon Moore prioritized that, they will at minimum on the field have two rushing threats. And if they decide that they want to do an end around or put both running backs on the field at the same time, you could very easily have a triple threat rushing attack. And I think USC, even if they stack the box, is going to have a very hard time dealing with that. And that's also partly because of reason number 3. Michigan is deep at tight end. Colston Loveland's injury is reportedly not as serious as initially thought or feared, indicated, whatever word you want to use. And outside of Colston Loveland, Michigan has Marlon Klein and they have Hogan Hansen. So they do have tight end depth, capable tight ends behind an elite tight end in Colston Loveland. These three in total have had 24 receptions for 246 yards and 2 touchdowns on the season. That doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not. But factoring in that Michigan's passing offense has looked anemic through 3 games, the tight ends are a bulk of this offense, particularly Colston Loveland, who is first on the team in receiving yards, and Marlon Klein is third on the team in receiving yards. The tight ends are deeper and better than the receivers are. And Michigan also has some upside at receiver with Samaj Morgan, Frederick Moore, and Tyler Morris, but I didn't put them on this 5 reasons why Michigan will beat USC video because A, they're unproven, and Michigan hasn't showcased that they want to use their receivers nearly as much as they want to use their tight ends. Another factor why I listed this Michigan tight end depth and upside as a reason is I believe USC is better at defensive back than linebacker. And consequently, with Michigan being superior at tight end than wide receiver, Michigan being more comfortable at tight end and having a better matchup advantage at tight end v linebacker as opposed to wide receiver v defensive back, they have a much better chance of having a successful passing attack if they go through their tight ends, more so than if they go through their wide receivers, primarily. Reason number 4 is Michigan's overall trench advantage. Michigan has a superior and deeper offensive line and defensive line than USC does. USC has the better quarterback. They have the better wide receivers. They may have the better defensive back room. I don't believe so, but I'm not going to argue with anyone who says USC is the better secondary based off of how these secondaries have performed throughout 3 weeks. Not going to argue it. And USC certainly, I'll get into that with my 5 reasons why USC will win this game video. But Michigan's trench advantage, I think, is undeniable. USC's offensive line has, so far this season, not looked great. In my view, it's a lot like last year's offensive line for the Trojans. They lost some production from last year. And so far, when you look at the sack numbers, in passing offense, USC owns Michigan in passing yards per attempt, passing attempts per game, completions per game. They more than double Michigan in passing yards per game. But the quarterback for USC is sacked on average 1 time per game. And for Michigan, he's sacked on average 1.3 times per game. And then you look at sacked percentage, Michigan's 59th, USC is 33rd. And I think a big reason why Michigan has had such a high sack percentage is Davis Warren being new in the pocket, being uncomfortable, and he also doesn't really fit Michigan's offense. And Michigan does have some youth at tackle with Evan Link. But USC's numbers are not encouraging either, especially when you remember that USC will have an easier time getting the football out, and they have a more experienced, proven, superior quarterback compared to Michigan. You look at the rushing offense, and USC struggled outside of a few big runs by Woody Marks to have a consistent ground attack against an LSU defensive line that just allowed tons of explosive plays by South Carolina. And South Carolina couldn't pass the football that effectively. So it was essentially a one-trick pony, South Carolina against LSU, with Raheem Sanders and also Lenoris Sellers before he suffered an injury. And hopefully he can heal up pretty quickly and get back into action. But on running the ball, USC in rushing offense, they average 5.6 yards per rush attempt. Michigan averages 5.3. I will tell you that Texas has a way better defense than LSU. So when you factor in defensive competition, Fresno State, they have a better defense than Utah State. Arkansas State and Utah State are literally identical in rushing yards allowed per carry, and they've played USC, they've played Utah. They also played, I forget who the FCS team they played in week 1 was, but that FCS team averaged over 4 yards per carry on them. So USC has not faced good rushing defenses. They have not faced good defenses whatsoever. Michigan has faced a good defense. And when you factor that in, along with the fact that Michigan's defensive line has more talent and they've performed better throughout the whole season, they do have superior trench play. And when it comes to winning Big Ten games and winning the Big Ten overall, which I have a hard time seeing Michigan or USC win the Big Ten at this point. It looks like it's going to be Ohio State's conference to lose. Winning in the trenches is a big part of winning the Big Ten and of climbing the ladder in this conference. So if USC wants to win this game, a big part of their victory will have to be at least holding their own against Michigan in the trenches. And I think Michigan won't just hold their own against USC, but they could very well dominate USC in the trenches. And reason number 5 is home field advantage. And it's different than Quinn Ewers coming to town because this is Miller Moss's first road start in his career, and it's USC's first Big Ten game. So there's a lot of unfamiliarity with USC entering this environment. And it's their first true road game of the season as well. And it's at 3:30, not at noon. Later in the day, the more home field advantage matters outside of rare events like the Iron Bowl at the end of the year or the game at the end of the year. And I think the crowd noise only adds on to how much USC's offensive line and quarterback specifically have to face. They already have to face an elite defensive line. They already have to face a defense that has some weaknesses that can be exploited, but they're still good. And they have to face a crowd that is going to be angry and is going to be loud. And they also have to face the likelihood that Michigan will do much better on offense than they did against Texas because USC's defense does not have, I will say this over and over again, USC is in year 1 of developing their new defense. Texas, even with some of the struggles they have, is in year 4 of their defensive system. 3 years of coaching from a legend like Bo Davis, and all of USC's elite head coaches, including D'Anton Lynn, including Matt Entz, including Doug Belk, they're all in year 1. And you can't fix that awful of a defense and make it an elite unit in year 1. You can't do it. Just ask Jim Knowles. It didn't work. It took him 2 years to make it elite. In year 1, it looked elite at first, but when it came time to play a near elite offense in Michigan at the end of the year and an elite offense in Georgia in the playoffs, it fell apart. And there's a good chance that USC's offense will have to score, and not just, score often, but get touchdowns, not field goals. Because Michigan will be able to, I think, run the ball on USC as we previously discussed, and also control clock. And therefore, USC may have to score quickly. Michigan may, while not stopping or preventing USC from scoring, they may be able to dictate the pace of the game. And therefore, in order to not fall behind Michigan or not get in a situation where Michigan scores before half on a long drive, and then they receive the opening kickoff to go up by 2 scores, or where Michigan, they do what they did against USC, like they did against Ohio State last year, where they go on a 7-8 minute drive and go up by more than a field goal with under a minute left, and then USC has to, score very quickly, which will not be a problem, I think, for a Lincoln Riley offense. But then again, you're going up against a Michigan defense where through 3 games there have been issues, but it's not a given that you're going to score on them in under 60 seconds. So home field advantage just adds on to all of that and is another reason why Michigan will win this game. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thanks to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being Heisman members and sponsoring this video and channel. Thanks to Chris Lane, Carlo OH, Ismar, Tyler Nye, Chilton Cush for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Steele, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being All-Conference members. The 5 reasons why USC will win this game video will be out later today. And if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon page or merchandise store via the links in the description or down below in the pinned comment. If you sign up as an All-American or Heisman member, you get access to my weekly picks posted on Patreon for all games that feature a Power 4 team. Have a great day, guys. Go Trojans and go Blue.